What is up, everybody? We are live here, going to give people a bit of time to show up. There's quite a lot of you here already. Very impressive. Beniamin, you're very popular.
Yeah, really great to be here. Really great to be here and have this conversation.
Yeah, I was just commenting when Beniamin signed on that, like, if I take my hat off and maybe put my hair up in the front a little bit, that maybe you guys would be confused as to who was talking. We didn't plan to have the same beard and shirt, but his has the logo on it if he goes up a little more.
Yeah, definitely.
Not exactly the same shirt. So I'm assuming that basically everyone here is here for a very specific reason, that they know all about Elrond and all the crazy progress that's happened. Every time I turn on Twitter, you guys have some incredible announcement or partnership. It's unbelievable, but I just don't think I've ever seen a project make such fast progress. And the floor was already very high, and for those of you out there, some context, Beniamin and I met, I've been very passionate about the project for a long time, and then I had him on my podcast, and it was just one of the most mind-blowing conversations I've had. And other people agreed, because it was one of the most engaging, most popular, most downloads, and one that I just got a ton of feedback on. I view Beniamin as one of those sort of rare Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos type thinkers. I hate to say that to you, like to your face. I know it's like awkward to hear things like that, but just someone who thinks so uniquely about the world. And I think that that's reflected very clearly in Elrond. And so I'm really excited to dig in here. So, man, welcome. How are you? Sorry to keep talking.
Yeah, really, really great to be here. Really great to have this conversation. And I like to start by saying that the incredible progress that we've really made is due to pushing with an incredibly talented team, with which we're pushing day and night. So we're quite fortunate to have built this team and to be able to push throughout the pandemic, with pandemic or without pandemic, just continuing pushing. And indeed, I do think that we have ahead of us a breathtaking future, and maybe about this we'll have a few points of discussion during this evening.
Of course. So, I mean, first, maybe it's best to start, because I know it's something that evolved, but what at this point would you say is the Elrond Vision? Like, give us the whole overarching, what are you guys doing and why?
Sure. The idea with the Elrond project is that we care specifically about two things: building a high bandwidth financial system or digital economy that is also transparent, and then giving access to anyone, anywhere, to this financial system or digital economy. And the reason why we care very, very deeply about this is that we believe that at this point there are, let's say, all the economic problems can be boiled down to two problems. First, there's fundamental low bandwidth financial system that we currently have that is also very opaque. And being low bandwidth means that you have all this kind of inefficiency that do not allow you to move really fast and efficient. But then secondary, you have a lot of opaqueness, which means that whenever you have opaqueness and no skin in the game or clear feedback loops, then there's a lot of corruption that pops in, and the economy starts backfiring. And then the second component that I think is extremely important is that we have still 1.7 billion people that are without access to any kind of financial system, even the minimal they would need. So I do think that if we can build this type of high bandwidth digital economy that works just like the internet, with the speed of the internet and the cost of the internet, and then manage to give access to anyone, anywhere, because we already have this with the internet. It just doesn't extend to the financial system yet. Then we'll probably be able to create something like a 10 to 100x factor of improvement or growth in the perhaps global economy. So it's either that we do this ourselves, or at least accelerate this at a global scale. And if we can do this, I think there's a tremendous growth that we have ahead of us.
It's really interesting because you always hear about the unbanked or the underbanked, you know, as you touched on 1.7 billion people, you said, which is just incredible. And there's a lot of, outside of the crypto space, at least, there's so many people that focus on getting those people banked, which is just so stupid, right? Like that, we need to completely skip it at this point, correct? Like circumvent the banking system. It's not going to help anyone. It's not the future. Everyone in the world has a mobile phone, even if they don't have electricity, basically. So this is the future of banking and payments and access, correct?
Totally. I think the idea is that there are about 5 to 6 billion people with mobile phones already in the world, and there's a huge opportunity to solve this for them in the simplest way possible. I'm generally always very pragmatic, in the sense that if you can improve people's lives, the idea is that you should not always aim for the ideal situation, but simply to improve things. But when there is indeed a possibility to improve things 10 times or 100 times, because people don't have any kind of access, and you could, with a mobile phone, give them the entire financial system in one simple application, then it's simply wrong not to do that. So there's both a huge opportunity, and I also believe maybe a moral argument to be made about what we're doing here. So we're super excited to push this, and also quite excited to be alive during this period, because I do think that there's no period in history that I'd wish to be part of as the one that we live right now.
You've talked to me before, our last conversation, you talked about that there being, I don't remember if you used the term inflection points but these pivotal moments in history when everything changes either with a single idea or a single technology. And this sounds like it has the potential use. You guys certainly believe that this could change everything moving forward, right?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of discussion around the blockchain space, a lot of interesting discussions, but maybe there's not enough discussion about how large the impact and the upside of this technology could be. And I want to make sure that I underscore, if people take one thing from this discussion, it should be that maybe during the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a very, very rapid transition of the entire financial system gradually moving on top of the blockchain. And there's no doubt about it. It's just a matter of time and a matter of having the right kind of platforms to move on. But what I'm saying with this is that within this change, we will probably have the largest generational opportunity of our lifetime. Not of playing a zero-sum game, just stealing some wealth from different other people, but rather creating so much improvement and social improvement and so much wealth that I don't think that there's anything that could be comparable for both the poorest people on earth, which, as I said, don't have access to financial instruments at all and so forth, but also for the most wealthy or creative people on earth, wherever they may be. So I think this idea that there is a huge, massive opportunity that we're living right now, and it's unfolding before our eyes, is the one thing that people should take home and really think about.
And so you've talked about, a 10x or 100x opportunity. What is Elrond's role now in that generational sort of wealth and opportunity that you're talking about? I mean, I think we all have the idea. We all hear the talking heads, crypto is going to make everybody rich and it's going to change the world and blah, blah, blah. But most of these projects are going to be worth nothing, right? So why is Elrond the one that's going to emerge from this? What are you doing specifically?
Sure. Maybe taking the opportunity part in a more numbers direction, and putting it into context, and then tying this to specifically what we think will create this kind of opportunity is. So the massive opportunity that I think will unfold will be a kind of multi-trillion-dollar market that will see not in 10 years, but in the next, possibly even in the next year, with what we see right now, but specifically in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see a multi-trillion-dollar market. And just moving a bit and then coming back to Elrond, I do think that this is not a zero-sum game. So we often like to fight the other projects just to make some points, but the idea here is much bigger than one single project. Bitcoin is not going away. Bitcoin is making progress, and it will be here for the long term. It will be a multi-trillion-dollar asset with a lot of opportunities. Again, Ethereum is not going away. It has a niche market to which it caters, and it will have a lot of opportunity. And in fact, I do believe that Ethereum will also be a multi-trillion-dollar asset. The interesting part, however, is that I believe Elrond will complement both Bitcoin and Ethereum in a way that has not been done before. And in fact, Elrond will, in the next 5 to 10 years, become a multi-trillion-dollar asset. And coming now back to the point of why I think this is very, very important is, if we think about how Bitcoin came to be, how Ethereum came to be, and then what Elrond is trying to do, we should try to think without having this kind of hindsight bias, where you just see things in a way as history looks right now when looking back. You need to try to do a kind of mental exercise where you see how things looked when Bitcoin came to be, why it was only adopted by the cypherpunks, why these people found it really interesting, understood some stuff, and then it gradually picked up some traction and so forth. And then Ethereum, when it came along, interestingly enough, it was not accepted by the Bitcoin people. This is why it had a kind of different group of people, which were developers, to which Ethereum became very interesting and relevant. So coming to Elrond, I specifically believe that Elrond will open the door to the mass market, to the mainstream, in a way that's not been done before in the blockchain space. And I also believe that here lies the elephant opportunity in the room, in the sense that everything we see in the current market is just users that are basically holding, trading, investing, but the user number, this is the most important metric that you need to have in mind. So the key question, when you see that we have something like 50 to 100 million people playing this game in the crypto space right now, the question is, why do we have so few people? What's happening there? What are we bringing to the table? How are we solving some problems? And is it possible to not maybe just steal 1 million from the other projects, but rather bring the next billion people in the blockchain space by solving some of these key issues? And it's here that I think Elrond makes the most important contributions. On the one hand, we're building this internet scale blockchain, where from now on, you don't have any kind of scalability problems and will be able to build just as you build on the internet. And I think this is hugely important because it opens up a new solution space. You're basically taking the tools, playing with them, but you don't have the dial-up modem with the limitations that you had in the early days of the internet and with the limitations that we've had previously in the blockchain space. Rather, you have this super high bandwidth architecture on which you can build right now, and you really have a very, very compelling argument. But moving beyond that, we also build this application called Maiar, which takes some of the most useful blockchain features and enables them to be used on a mass scale with a very, very intuitive simplicity and a different kind of user experience. So this is where when you connect these two and when you make things super simple, they become relevant to a market that previously was locked outside due to huge complexity.
So generational wealth, generational opportunity is a matter of mass adoption. You're opening something that can be built on and utilized at scale of the entire world, as opposed to, we've heard Ethereum sort of likened to like the first space shuttle, like 1985 computer on there, or whatever, 70s actually, but 1970s computer technology, which they kept on the space shuttle until like the 90s. You guys, I mean, what, 10,000 times faster? Is that accurate? I remember that was the number. I'm sure it's even different now.
No, so it's 1,000 times faster, but 1,000 times faster translates in from 15 transactions that Ethereum does. We're doing more than 15,000.
Right.
So we basically can scale beyond 100,000 if there's demand. But at this point, beyond solving the scalability problem, I think it's incredibly hard to understand why it's always a matter of numbers. If you can bring another 100 million people in the blockchain space, everything changes. The entire economics of the entire space changes. So what we want to do with Elrond is bring in the wave of adoption that lifts all boats, including Bitcoin, including Ethereum. And at that point, you can focus on something that has not been done before and that opens this kind of tremendous opportunities that we're discussing about.
That makes a ton of sense. So I touched on it in the beginning. I mean, you guys just like endless partnerships. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you would even have time to take these meetings. I mean, we saw BitGo and eToro even just recently. Is that part of? I've heard you use the term hypergrowth. Is that part of the way that you find hypergrowth is by partnering with other companies, or do you mean something else when you say hypergrowth?
Yeah. So the idea with hypergrowth is this idea that is very similar to a pandemic-like spreading. You see, there's a very interesting difference between epidemics and pandemics. And the difference is that when you reach a kind of critical mass with a super high spreading virality, at that point, you basically cannot extrapolate with normal models how fast the spreading becomes. So I do think that we will reach a point with crypto where once we have reached critical mass, the adoption becomes sort of unstoppable. And I would add here that just as with the pandemic, the global pandemic that we had with COVID, where people did not understand some fundamental things about what was happening, namely that unlike any other previous period in history, we were never as hyper-connected and interconnected as we were right now, like in 2020.
So true.
And then having this kind of interconnectedness with a high virality and with a high interaction between the individuals that could spread this creates a kind of no-brainer natural spreading of a virus. So it's, I think, very similar in our case right now, what's happening with the crypto space. Namely, if you see what's happening even with Bitcoin and everything, I do think that we're very close to a point where with hypergrowth, I define this point where you'll not be able to predict how fast things can spread. And this is specifically, again, because of a few factors. We've never in history had this kind of interconnectedness where we're basically having a nervous system as humanity, instant feedback loops, whatever is happening, wherever it's happening in the world, you're almost there. You can see, you can feel, you can talk. So this type of thing combined with a kind of addictive technology with global distribution and with unlimited number of participants that could make money in some way creates a kind of explosion that is waiting to happen. And we are trying to basically unlock this kind of explosion that we think will come very, very fast.
Yeah, the global pandemic is the perfect example, right? You see the kind of flat curve and then it just parabolic and it continues straight up, and then you see them attempt to model it and it's always completely inaccurate and false. So I guess then the question becomes, when do you see the curve go parabolic? What's the tipping point? When will we know that we've hit that point and that it's time to expect this, this hyper growth that you're talking about?
I do think that we are very close. In order to have this kind of hyper growth, I think we need, so we already have some of the necessary components. The fact that we have this kind of, like I said, hyper connectedness, the fact that we have this accessibility to the crypto space, to Elrond specifically, and then the fact that all of this becomes much more simple to interact with, or 10 times more simple than anything that we've had in the space. At that point, it's just a matter of gathering the necessary traction, because from that point, it's just feedback loops repeating themselves until you reach the critical mass and then the tipping point. So I do think that with the launch, specifically the launch of Maiar, which we have scheduled for the end of January, we'll see a very, very different adoption curve. It's not as with the normal wallets, normal applications. At that point, we're starting to really play with a virus-like adoption. I think I can see, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I realized my mic went off. Talk about Maiar specifically. Can you tell us exactly what it is, exactly what it's going to do? Because to me, it's like one of the most exciting things. Also, I'm a fellow Lord of the Rings nerd, as we've talked about. So I love that everything is named after Lord of the Rings. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So Maiar is this very simple, intuitive application on which you'll have any kind of financial application that you need. This is the critical thing to understand about Maiar, that if you have a blockchain that you're integrated with and you have this very simple, intuitive interface, on that you can build anything you want. At first, we will, of course, just create the most simple way to interact with Elrond, whether it's a wallet through which you can buy, stake, send anywhere in the world really cheaply, really fast. And then, of course, we'll have some very interesting ways of adding utility and usage so that you can basically use this almost at anywhere, even beyond the crypto space. So not only sending crypto to people that are in the crypto space, but also going beyond that. This is just the first starting point. Of course, you want an application like this to be social, and I won't go in discussing how we want to make it immediately, but it's almost a no-brainer that you want this to be social. And then of course, you want it to be like a game. You don't want to put a lot of effort. You just want to seem like you're playing something, and then, well, you're playing and also making some money, sending some money to your friends, doing all this stuff, and then imagining that you can put all the interesting things that we have as innovation in the DeFi space and in all the other sectors of the blockchain space, but just taken at the internet scale. At that point, you understand that you can use this in a very, very, very interesting way.
So how many people are waiting for Maiar right now?
I think we'll probably cross something like 180,000. So we are, super excited with the feedback that we've seen for Maiar. We have a closed community where we still deploy things, get the feedback, and try to push as fast as possible. We're actually going to have one of the latest updates with some really cool things that you'll see that have not been shared before very soon. So this is going extremely well, and we're super eager to put this out and launch it at the end of January.
That's a crazy number, because I figured that the entire crypto Twitter community is probably between 1 and 1.5 million people. So you have over 10% of the people in the entire space effectively already excited and testing the app. That's incredible.
Yes, it's a hugely large number to begin with, and we do expect that this will pick up really, really fast. This is why we're defining the term hypergrowth to specifically be related to Maiar, because without an application like Maiar, you're basically having the same discussion for years, and still nobody is solving the issue. So we thought it's about time to bring this out and launch it.
So I touched on earlier, you've had so many partnerships. When do you start to penetrate the non-crypto world, and when do we start to see the huge names that everybody gets excited about as partnerships are coming into the space, really in partnership with you guys?
Mm-hmm. The idea with our partnerships is that for some of them we've been working for more than half of a year, 8-9 months. It's a lot of work by the entire team that is being put in, but we are super excited whenever we can bring this type of adoption. And as you mentioned, we've had a huge number. Even if you look at 1 week, it's very, very exciting even to look back. This is why we do the reviews every Monday, because when you look and see how large, how impressive or interesting the progress has been, then you always try to beat that. So, for instance, we've had eToro X just announced the other day, and I cannot stress enough how important this kind of integration is, because it's outside of the crypto space. It's already penetrating the mainstream. As people may know, eToro has a super large audience that distributed around the world and so forth. And eToro X is the exchange on which they provide liquidity to eToro. So the idea that we're specifically trying to escape this kind of narrow niche that we have in the crypto space is clear. And now we're trying to continue this type of path. I think during the next year, we're going to specifically try to beat all years we've had combined. So, of course, this can only be done when we are either collaborating with some of the key people outside of crypto space, or when we bring adoption through the applications ourselves.
So basically, there'll just be so much adoption that they'll be forced to get involved or be left behind.
Yeah, it's either collaborate, but they'll the idea is that if you cannot beat them, you should join them. Ideally,
Can't beat them, join them.
Always try to beat them. And if you get sufficient traction, they always start taking things very, very seriously.
Can you talk a bit about the coin? Obviously, we had the rebrand from Elrond to EGLD, what its utility is, how it's used, and what its place is, I guess, once Maiar launches and we see this, where does it fit in?
Sure. So I think this is specifically the scenario that we've not seen played at all, either in the crypto space or outside, where you have a scarce digital currency like EGLD, which powers the entire Elrond architecture, which is used for staking, which basically grows with the growth of the ecosystem. But we've not seen it in a situation where you have it in very scarce amount, a limited amount, and then with a practically unlimited adoption scope through an application like Maiar. So I think we have some interesting models of how this will play out. If I discuss the models, it will seem like I'm trying too much to discuss prices, but honestly, I do think that the economics that we've built and taken the time to think through with Maiar will become like a self-reinforcing pandemic, but in a good way, just to forget the bad pandemic that we've had.
It only sounds bad this year, to use the terminology, but what can you do? Does that mean that EGLD could theoretically become like a global currency? Like it becomes the money of the future? Is that what we're talking about here in a perfect scenario?
We do think that we're going to see a kind of internet of money. And the internet of money means that we're going to see both digital currencies such as Elrond, EGLD, and fiat currencies translated to digital currencies, either issued by banks or issued by other third parties. And I do think that these currencies will interact in a way that is unlike the one we see before, where there will likely be either multiple currencies within the world that will be the base currencies for their ecosystems. So for instance, if Elrond, say, takes 10% of the global financial system in a way where a lot of instruments are built on Elrond, migrated and so forth, of course, within the entire ecosystem, EGLD will be a kind of base currency. We're not trying to impose it in any way, but the utility will be the strongest adoption force. So whenever you see that there's strong utility, that you can use this practically just as money without having to think about it, because you can exchange it, use it in stores or wherever you need it. And then in addition to that, this currency stores value unparalleled to what the other currencies do. So in a very, very robust way, you'll basically want to store a lot in this currency. And then at a grand scale, I think there will be kind of a situation where let's assume that, for instance, you have a space filled with energy. Within that space, the object that has the strongest attraction feedback loop will absorb the largest energy amount in the space. So if there's a limited amount of energy, let's say a limited economic energy, you'll have currencies that depreciate and sort of fade into irrelevance, and then currencies that appreciate and attract an even larger amount of capital. But I think this analogy extends even more, where I don't think it's just that the new digital economies will eat the old economies, but rather that will even create new energy with the new people that will come in and so forth. So to make the story very short, I do think that there's a strong argument to be made that in the future, if we succeed to bring this type of adoption, EGLD has the potential to become a base currency that is extend outside the Elrond ecosystem.
You just talked about government, and obviously one of the hottest topics in the world, certainly in our community, is central bank digital currencies. I'm curious how you think, at the end of the day, cryptocurrencies are a competitor to central bank digital currencies, in my opinion. How, you know, with those coming, how do you operate in context? Do you expect that they will be extremely relevant? Do you think that people will push back against central bank digital currencies? I think that people certainly in our community would prefer to not use them because we understand the privacy implications and all of those things. But what role do central bank digital currencies play in the future of your plans?
I do think that we're specifically not taking a stance from an ideological perspective. So if banks can adapt, and provide relevant and beneficial services, I think that they should be alive and kicking, have market share. If they cannot do this, then it will be extremely problematic for people to choose banks when they have alternatives. So we're in fact trying to position things in a way that we remove or let's say diffuse the conflict that exists between this new system that improves things and the old system that sort of feels left behind and will rather want to fight. And then I think if we create a way for them to adopt the technology without much friction and enable them to issue currencies, to play with it, of course, by new rules that are digital and transparent and so forth, we'll see a much faster adoption and less rejection and less resistance from the governments and central banks. Of course, things will not be as utopian as I describe them right now. They're not perfect. People do have interests, but I do believe that we should always put the users and people first. So if the banks can offer really useful services that do not rob the people from of their money and time, then they should win. If not, they should really consider or reconsider their options before it's too late. And I think Elrond is ready to collaborate and offer them some solutions.
Banks are screwed. That's the real answer. You can't say it because you're the CEO, but banks are structured in a manner to punish poor people. Let's be real. They don't offer access. They're impossible to use. If you do have access because of the fees, your money is locked. You have no access to your funds. They're not fixing banks. And central banks are even worse, right? That's just a bank. We talk about a central bank digital currency is going to eliminate any privacy from transactions. It's going to give perfect control of the money supply. Forget being able to pay with something with cash. Forget being able to calculate your taxes on your own. They're just going to take it, right? I mean, it's to me, it's scary. I mean, I love the idea that people will transact digitally because I think that'll bring more adoption to crypto when people find out that CBDCs are awful and that, crypto is a better alternative. But the use of central bank digital currencies to me is a bit terrifying.
Sure, but if you let's maybe do this kind of exercise. If you do a 20, 30 year jump in the future, I think it's unlikely that sort of central bank digital currencies will be the dominant currencies. Because it's just that up until recently, we did not have other options. When you don't have other options, you take the best you have and just move forward. But since we've invented Bitcoin and then Ethereum, and now this new span of a lot of other experiments with Elrond and EGLD and so forth. At this point, things become unstoppable. Nobody in their right mind would choose to go back. And I think banks, the smart people in banks, because not all of them, let's say, are malicious. Some may be malicious, and we clearly see signs of that. But there are smart people that are trying to adapt. If they don't, I don't see them in the future that we're discussing about. It's quite unlikely that they'll have this type of let's say control over people's time and money.
Right, they'll try. I guess to me then the question becomes, if you're trying to create a global product, and this is the like you said, the internet of money, this is the future of money. How much do you have to concern yourself with regulators in every single country and the difficulties of dealing with each individual government? I mean, obviously I live in the United States and they don't want us to have any fun or use anything that we like because Big Brother is taking care of us, right? So how much of a challenge is that for you? Because at the end of the day, like you have to deal with every single government at some point to have your coin tradable or used or anything.
Sure. The idea, I think, is there are some clear regulations in a few countries. Most of the countries still don't have regulations at this point, at least clear ones for cryptocurrencies, because most of them, frankly, still don't understand what's happening. So beyond the speculation aspect, I think most of the people still lack the basic understanding of what the utility and breakthrough and innovation in this technology is. And I would actually encourage any government, any kind of government official to take the time and study things first. Before they put some regulations, restrictions, and so forth, they should definitely have some discussions, search for the relevant projects that are really trying to do things in a way that improve people's lives, and have some discussions. Other than that, I think US is obviously the strongest sort of player in the space that can always put a game over or a pause to the entire game. I was just discussing with some colleagues today, and we were basically saying that whenever you see everything picking up, traction picking up, people getting super excited about the entire thing, the one thing that comes to mind is that if governments sort of don't destroy the party or stop the party, then we'll see some very, very interesting things happening during the next few months.
Yeah, I used to have a lot more fear of the United States stopping the party, as you said, but like when you have Paul Tudor Jones and Michael Saylor and Stanley Druckenmiller on TV talking about buying Bitcoin and it being a store of value, corporations putting their money in, those guys don't gamble.
For
right?
sure.
I mean, these guys know the regulators. They know what's happening. If they're putting $1 billion of a public company's money into Bitcoin, they're not doing it and hoping that regulators aren't going to stop them. So it's my feeling just rationally that there's people who know something and that it's not going to be as bad as people fear, because those people wouldn't take that risk if it was.
Sure. I do think that coming back to the point that we've discussed at the beginning, namely that there's a kind of critical mass that's gathering, that you basically look at things and then think, no, it's very similar to what we've seen before and so forth. But right now, we're on the cusp of such an explosion, hypergrowth explosion, where you see both institutions, then high network individuals, funds, and people from all over the world adopting these things in a way that is not reliant on one single party. So it's already, I think, beyond the power of one government to stop the party or, let's say, stop it entirely. I think they can always, let's say, make things take a lot longer. Just by banning them, by creating a lot of friction. but I don't think it's in their best interest. You see, this game seems to me like a kind of prisoner's dilemma, where at first you want to play the game in a way where you say, no, it's like a Mexican standoff. No, I'm not the one who's going first. This is bad. This is interesting. We should stay away and so forth. Most of the countries play this type of game. And then it becomes an arms race when the first country that is large starts putting out a positive message around it. At that point, everybody switches the message and says, I don't want to be the fool that is left behind, not playing the game. So it's clear that the economics make sense, and there's a huge benefit in adopting this type of technology. And I do think governments will do well and be smart to start paying attention and adopting the technologies themselves, because the country that really does this first will probably lead the next economic boom.
It's so funny to hear you describe countries that way, because that's just how people are, right? It's the same reason that people who you told to buy Bitcoin at $6,000 will buy it at $23,000. Because finally it got there, and then they FOMO in, and countries are going to do the same thing. And we're seeing it with central bank digital currencies. Now that China is making legitimate progress, everybody is taking notice. And whether it's out of fear or FOMO, I don't know, but they're going, this is the future. It's coming. You can see it.
Definitely. And every time the snowball becomes larger and larger. Once you reach critical mass, it will explode in such a way that was never foreseeable, right? From 1 week to another. I even think that as we move forward, you might see a kind of explosion in adoption and prices in a way where they tend to extremes. It will not be, okay, you just go $1,000, grow $1,000 in Bitcoin and a few tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars in EGLD and so forth. Rather, when the masses really discover this, we've not seen anything like this happen before. The internet has not existed with tools like the ones we have right now, so that people can enter, buy in a market almost instantly. You always had, if you had the internet, you did not have this kind of tools. If you had the instrument or interesting opportunities, you did not have access in a way that's almost instant. You always took you 3 months or 1 month until the bank said okay, and so forth. When you have all these elements, the internet, the massive opportunity, and the instant gratification and feedback loop, it's like an explosion is just waiting to happen.
Big bang. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. First of all, I want to say to everybody who's listening, you can ask questions and we have someone who will hopefully go through and grab a couple of them, but I know you probably have specific questions of your own. So feel free to go ahead and type those. So, I mean, so obviously the biggest catchword in all of crypto is DeFi, everything. How is EGLD DeFi? How does that play into your plans for the future? To me, like, that's one of the most exciting aspects of crypto and one of the most exciting developments we've really seen in the last year. Just the ability to actually grow your money.
Exactly. I do think that DeFi is essentially can be boiled down to this idea that is you need high bandwidth money that is accessible and valuable, preserves value in a way that makes sense and is accessible to anyone, anywhere. This is the fundamental value of DeFi. The fact that it's decentralized is a secondary quality that makes it even more valuable. So if the money would be useless, the fact that it's decentralized would make it no more useless than it is. If the money is really high bandwidth, preserves the value really well, is really robust, and by the way, it's decentralized, so that you cannot censor it and so forth. At that point, it's extremely valuable. And I would say that this is the insight that I've seen with Tesla as well. The one thing that Musk understood about electric cars that all the other, let's say, inventors did not understand before him was that it's not enough to want to, let's say, solve global warming and then design a car that is super shitty and then hope that people will buy your shitty car and then drive it around and so forth. You'll, of course, convince 1,000 people, a few thousand people, but then the trend dies down. What Musk understood is that if you can design a car that is sexier than any gasoline car, faster than any gasoline car, safer than any gasoline car, oh, and by the way, it's also electric, at that point, everyone will want the electric car just because it's the sexiest car in the space. I think it's the same with finance. If you can design a money that is super fast, super inexpensive, global to transfer, and preserves value in a way that is incomparable to what you have with cash. Oh, and by the way, it's also decentralized in a way that you have censorship resistance and so forth. These things people really don't care too much about. They only care about them if you have the first qualities, right? And I think this is where Elrond and EGLD shines a lot, because you have this internet scale performance, meaning that you can send the money anywhere almost instantly at a trivial cost. But then you have the economics that make it as a position it for this kind of very, very robust growth, where you have scarce and limited amount of EGLD and almost unlimited or 8 billion people. You can only imagine how this will play out as adoption comes in.
So is EGLD the Cybertruck or the Roadster?
I would say it's the first it's the Roadster, and then it becomes a Cybertruck.
Okay, perfect. I like it. Good analogy. So we had actually a great question. Somebody asked, will it be possible to exchange NFTs on the Elrond blockchain with Maiar?
Definitely. This is why I think the entire point of NFTs. Think about how many people understand what an NFT is. If you can abstract the concept and then just put it in a very simple, intuitive application and put it as a collectible that you can have in a value feed and just exchange with your friends in a very, very simple and intuitive way, at that point, collectibles will spread like fire. For as long as you have to work with the private keys, discuss about NFTs, right? Think about it. Discuss about this type of stuff and still discuss about the abstractions, complexities. You'll have very, very a lot of just friction that will slow the adoption path. But it's in this specific point that Maiar will shine the most. Once you have this layer of simplicity that works, on that you can super easily add the new app, and you'll just absorb the entire space, because people will be able to use it, and where people are, that's where the innovation will go.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest barrier to mainstream adoption for crypto has always been that people just don't want to take that step into the complexity. They're scared by that long address, or they don't want to open a wallet. They don't want to secure their assets. But there is going to be a time with Maiar where effectively you don't have to think about what's happening. It's as simple as using your phone or using the internet or downloading an app on your phone. Those things that people are comfortable with, that are those major points of friction.
Yes, precisely. I think that if you can make it, like I said, if you can make it like a game that you feel like playing, not that you're learning and then this is super difficult and so forth. You're just playing, sending some money, exchanging some value, then things will pick up extremely, extremely fast.
That makes sense. So a couple other great questions. How hard is it to hold in all the exciting things behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's pretty hard, but at this point we've gotten used to. at least we know that now the entire infrastructure for the platform is out. People can play with it, and there's a lot coming on that front. But the Maiar part, as I said, will make things a lot more interesting to the end user.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'm just getting more questions here. Next, can you explain in simple terms how delegation works and what is the percentage for delegators?
Delegation is basically this idea that you can borrow, not borrow, but use your money in a way where you can strengthen the security of the network. And then you basically put it in a kind of deposit. The deposit solves some problems in the network in terms of security. And then for the security that you provide, you receive, let's say, interest. Although for simplicity purposes, I will use interest, but for legal reasons, I would not be able to use that. So you would receive an interest for the security you provide. The interest at this point is something like 29% for the delegators and 36% for the validators. Starting from January, this will be something like 24% for validators and 19% for delegators. But yeah, you should keep in mind that this is a period of hypergrowth for Elrond, for EGLD, and the fact that you receive an interest on top of this hypergrowth should be extremely competitive and extremely enticing.
So funny that you're not allowed to say interest. I've come across that so many times. You're supposed to say like rewards or something, right?
Exactly.
Rewards, because
Definitely.
you're going to fool everybody into not realizing that they're getting interest because you used the wrong term. The next question was, will there be lending pools?
For sure. We in fact have a few of the projects that are building on Elrond. One of the key projects is, of course, Orion. They're building this very cool meta liquidity pool that I've discussed about. On top of them, we'll probably have several DeFi modules, whether you're talking about automated market makers that allow you to create this type of incentives, that allow you to bootstrap this liquidity pool for liquidity pools for different markets and lending pools. This will all be available and probably very soon.
Perfect. That makes sense. I'm looking at the next questions. Someone's asked a few times. I guess it's the same, sort of along the same lines, but will Maiar provide a way to take a loan? And it says, or create money pools for lending, but clearly you talked to that, but will you be able to take loans?
Yeah, I would say that think of what we have with DeFi right now as 1,000 people just playing the same game in a very, very small niche. Now, taking this innovation and putting it in Maiar, at that point, you'll see the massive utility it can get, because people really need loans. And they need it in a way where they don't have to think too much about the complexities and so forth. So if we can abstract that, yeah, loans will be a very, very interesting use case in Maiar.
Yeah, somebody asked, is it safe to say that Elrond sounds like an entire DeFi ecosystem? I think it's safe to say that.
Yeah, I would say that, like we said before, if you boil down decentralized finance, it's more about building this kind of high bandwidth financial layer that is global, universally accessible, and that on top of which you can rebuild any kind of instrument that you have in finance. This is what you'll be able to do, and you can actually do right now in Elrond.
Someone asked if we'll see a credit card based on Elrond.
I won't want to.
That's the one you're not allowed to. Probably something you're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah, this is quite plausible.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. These are all things that we're seeing. And when you talk about Maiar and the ability to do everything within one ecosystem, then, I mean, I'm sure there's even much. It's funny because a lot of these questions, the ones I ask or think about, are all within the very conventional, like what we're used to asking about, right? Cool, a crypto card, or cool, like I can take a loan or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, knowing you, that you're probably way beyond those very simple and legacy sort of ideas, and you just probably can't talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, the idea is exactly this, that you have some really clear things that work. The things that work you want to put in the application, and then you have some things that don't work at all, and those you want to reinvent completely, put them in, and offer an experience that is unparalleled. Because at the end of the day, it's the experience that really counts for the user.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, are there any like huge upcoming developments that you can tell us about that we might not know about yet, or is it all a huge secret?
No, I would say that probably the most important milestones that we're looking at are during the mid of January. We're trying to have the most complex and significant mainnet upgrade. A lot of things have been put into this. Specifically, smart contracts will be enabled, and people will be able to deploy the smart contracts in a super fast and inexpensive way. Second, the staking part becomes will have a much wider distribution, where from 2,169 nodes will move to 3,000 validated nodes across the world. And beyond this, of course, we're working on a few other things, but integrating all these parts with the APIs, the wallets, explorers, and so forth, will just prepare everything so that we launch Maiar immediately after that. And in parallel to all this, we are, of course, trying to prepare for a hackathon where we put a lot of effort into bringing awareness to the dev toolkit that we have available on Elrond, so that people can really build stuff. We have this 30% royalties that any kind of smart contract developer will receive through their smart contracts, which is, I think, really cool as a built-in business mechanism. And yeah, beyond this, so there's the hackathon, there's the mainnet upgrade, there's the Maiar launch, and in the meantime, there's all these cool collaborations, partnerships, and progress that we keep sharing on all fronts.
How many hours of sleep do you get a night? Sounds like less than 3, if I had to guess. Or are you a robot?
No. I don't get too many, but 3 I think would probably be really tricky. But like I said, I do think that it's this time that you want to trade sleep for really making progress. This is the time when you want to seize the opportunity and make as much progress as possible. We were even joking about one thing. When we're discussing the investment part, like how people should behave and so forth, you always try to emphasize being super cautious, like do invest only the money you can afford to lose, be super thoughtful and so forth. But then whenever I can discuss this with some friends, I always try to say that it's not the thing that I would do in this type of opportunity. This is something so unique and different from the normal stuff that you get to see in the life that you usually live, that it takes some time, let's say reading comparisons, to really see how large this kind of opportunity is. And you do whatever it takes to make the progress and offer the solution that you really need to offer.
I had Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF from FTX and Alameda Research. His podcast came out today, but we were talking about kind of sleeping and all the like crazy things that go through your head. And he's trading, doing billion-dollar arbitrage while running an exchange. And he had a great quote. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he basically said that I would rather sleep less than lose sleep. Like just do the work now rather than be stressed about not having done the work. So like,
Yeah,
I thought that was just a brilliant, like, I'd never
Totally.
heard that. He's such a smart guy. Yeah.
Totally. Definitely.
Yeah. So
Totally
it's like,
agree with that. Yeah, I would say that for me, it has always been like, if I have something that I truly believe in, I cannot wait for the night to pass, to wake up and just push as hard as possible. It almost seems like life is a game, in the sense that challenges are everywhere. Of course, you'll face challenges, but if you have something that you truly believe in and put energy in, and a lot of people that are around me at Elrond that are doing the same, it's like it's a really nice video game simulation that you just play, and yeah, interesting.
nothing pisses me off more than having to sleep. If I could have one superpower, I think in the world, it would be to never have to sleep. It's the opposite of my wife, who just like wants to sleep, and she's like, shut up. And I'm up at like 4 o'clock in the morning diddling away. But I mean, you and I have talked about this endlessly, actually. And I just thought of this, but like much of our previous conversations privately and in the podcast was about the importance of time, and how the only reason to have money is to be able to buy time down the road, and to be able to do the things that you want. And we haven't talked about that, but that really, and even when you watch the Maiar video and all those things, that's really at the end of the day what all of this is about, right?
Definitely. I do think that with the innovation that we enable, perhaps the most important thing that we could actually build on top, and we're definitely thinking about this right now, is universal basic income. And this would be a truly huge step forward if it would be built on a platform like Elrond and on an application like Maiar, because it's the ideal tool that makes this possible. Even if you would have a universal basic income, let's say, structure or idea, you would face two types of problems: either the scalability problem, if you want to do it at the internet scale, you have some problems, or the distribution problem. Even if you want to distribute the money, the question is, how do you do it? When you have these two components, then you can unlock something like that, which I think would probably unlock a kind of post-scarcity world scenario, which, yeah, it would be interesting for some people to really, it's even tricky to think, because people are not used to not have to do anything, and you can die of boredom, or become psychologically depressed and so forth, just because all of a sudden the fact that you had to fight for a lot of things and sort of gave you meaning. But then if you don't have to fight for anything, it could be tricky. But on the other hand, I think this would unlock probably the most hugely productive time for humanity, where all the creative people, the curious people, would really push things to the next level, whether it's science, whether it's engineering, different type of technologies. We would simply be able to make some huge leaps there. So I sort of think that beyond the immediate things that we're focusing on, if we can accelerate the transition of a structure like this, it would have huge implications.
Yeah, 21st century Renaissance, basically, right? I mean,
yeah,
if everybody had time on their hands, and things like Maiar, but technology in general, I mean, they're inherently deflationary, right? I mean, the more things that machines do for us, the less we have to work and the more time we have. The tricky part there is how do you make a living if you're working less, right? But this solves for some of that, because there's yield and there's value being created.
Yeah. It's incredible how much this kind of value creation mechanism will change when you have an instant high bandwidth financial system and different tools with which you can work. Like imagine in Maiar a value feed through which you can take the photos, sell them, create this kind of collectibles of different kinds, and then be an artist in 1,000 ways that you could not be before. And then also find some peers who would love that type of art, who would pay for it, with whom you'd be able to exchange these things instantly, in a way that you can only imagine right now. This is the kind of future that I think we'll have very, very, very soon.
I love it. I love it. It's amazing. So I know that we're kind of up against it with time here. Were there any parting thoughts, any things that you want people to definitely know about that we may not have touched on? I can't believe we've been talking for like 70 something minutes already. It goes by so fast.
Yeah, I would say that Elrond is just about to enter hypergrowth period. And hypergrowth means that we're going to specifically position things so that you have this super high performant technology and there's this universal accessibility to this technology that unlock a different space for you to play, to build, to create value. And once people discover this and can compare it and start playing with it, I think we'll be very surprised by the speed with which we'll see adoption in this. Of course, we have some other trajectories for the blockchain space that we're aiming for, verticals and so forth. All of this is worked on. The team is pushing super hard, and we're thankful to have them and to push with a lot of people to make this a reality. I only think that maybe I think the most interesting thing will be to have the same conversation next year during the same time and just look back what hypergrowth really meant, how it translated into reality, and I think we'll be amazed.
I mean, already since we spoke a few months ago, it's leaps and bounds ahead. So I can't imagine when it does hit that parabolic growth, how fast it's going to increase. I will, in the description, I'm going to add all of the links, but can you tell everybody where they should be following you guys, where they should sign up, where they can participate? We kind of put it together last minute and I didn't include them, but right after we're done, I'm going to list everything down there for everybody to see.
Totally. So elrond.com is the website where you'll find all the information on the blog and so forth. You can find us on Twitter, Elrond Network and Beniamin Mincu, and you can join our Telegram group where a lot of our super passionate community is just waiting to help solve some of the questions you might have and collaborate. Actually, big shout out to the Elrond community, which
I'm watching these comments. Like I actually have I have someone going through and trying to help moderate because it's just happening so fast. I mean, it's like rocket ships and Ben is God. it's amazing. I mean, it really, what an incredible testament to everything you've built, because people don't just do that for no reason, right? And there's so many things to be passionate about, so many projects to follow. It's incredible, the passion that your community has. Love to see it.
Great time to be alive. Great time to be alive, to share this conversation and to share this with the entire community.
You as well. So how do I get a logo on my shirt? I need an Elrond shirt. Come on, man. I think I've earned it by now.
I'll make sure I send one. Definitely.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know everybody loved it, and we'll continue to share it. And we will, anytime that you want, and there's something big happening, we'll revisit, because I think it'll be fun every month, 2 months, 3 months to just get back on here and see how it's grown. We'll have like a timeline and videos of Elrond's progress.
Huge thanks, Scott. Really great conversation, and happy to come here and have this conversation as always. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for showing up and watching. We had a lot of people here. It really is a testament to how popular you guys are and what you're building. So thanks once again, everybody. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
I thought that was great.